The Twilight series is an undead juggernaut. Since 2005, the novels and movies about Bella, her vampire Edward, and Jacob the werewolf have netted billions of dollars. For 2 years in a row, the most popular baby names in America are Isabella and Jacob. That never happened for Nosferatu.
Twilight is the boy banding of vampires.
My ultimate conclusion about Edward Cullen is that he's what I call the My Little Pony vampire. He is sparkly, pretty, and deeply attractive to the very young.
Originally, vampires were the rebellion against the repressive Victorian stuffy society. Dracula was a swarthy, smooth-talking sexual foreigner that was going to show Victorian ladies a good time. But eventually, as with all movements, they become beaten into submission and become domesticated, in the same way punk went from Sid Vicious to Avril Lavigne.
But it wouldn't happen without a 29-year-old Mormon housewife named Stephenie Meyer. And while it seems like an innocent love story, Twilight actually addresses one of the most troubling trends of our day.
We're living in a time when young girls are bombarded with sexualized images and these messages that they should be sexually active and embrace their sexuality.
And they seem to be listening. 7 out of 10 American teens lose their virginity by their 19th birthday. And the United States leads the developed nations in teen pregnancy.
Stephenie Meyer writes explicitly with the idea that it is possible to warn teens against premarital sex.
In Twilight, Meyer turns sex into the real monster to be avoided at all cost.
Bella and Edward can't have sex. It's because Edward's afraid of hurting her. Every vampire before Twilight, the male vampire was the seducer. There's a link there between sex and death and blood. Twilight breaks that.
The message there is, if you give in to that attraction, and you do let the vampire bite you, which is, of course, a very sexual act, then you are doomed.
As parents, we don't want them to be interested in sex. When you look at the relationship between Edward and Bella, you've got a relationship that has all the shiny, happy aspects of love without any of the messiness that comes with sex. So it's a really safe romance.
But to some critics, abstinence isn't the only hidden message in the seemingly innocent tale of vampire love.
Bella is your classic damsel in distress. She's not like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who does her own thing. She's entirely dependent upon Edward, who treats her a bit like a child. It's a bad precedent for teenage girls to get, that you need a man to protect you and to tell you what to do and to give you things.
But what's the point in a vampire with no bite?
What does it mean when a vampire just dazzles like diamonds and doesn't scare anybody?
What happens when your monsters become so human that they're no longer your enemy and you don't want to kill them anymore?
Twilight has kind of diluted the monster that we need so that we can really work out the things that we're really scared of. We're looking for that new undead. We're looking for something to be our new devil, to be our new dark.
So what form will that new devil take? It all depends on what we fear most.
So if we're afraid of a generation of 100-year-old people with exploding numbers of Alzheimer's, perhaps this will then be manifested through zombie fears. If people are afraid of a certain wealthy class being able to extend life indefinitely, this becomes the aristocratic vampire.
Every generation gets the monsters it deserves. Brought into the light, they reveal our deepest fears and desires about everything from sex and death to celebrity, immortality, and class warfare.
We live vicariously through them, and we triumph, and we get to bottle and pack these fears back away so we don't have to worry about them.
As long as we have humans that are confronting really troubling, insurmountable obstacles, we're going to rely on our monsters to get us through those times.
From the man who inspired the modern-day vampire to the suave count who comes to define it. Whether they're the objects of our affections or the mindless hordes we're trying to escape, the undead haunt our dreams and lurk in the shadows of our subconscious. Whatever the future holds, the undead will be there, waiting to scare us and also help